Yeah. So hello everyone. Today we have a Daniel with us in an amazing session on the power of Azure App Service to deploy our web apps. So firstly, let's wait for 2 minutes and I will be going through Azure developer site, and then I will request Daniel to start the session. So I'm sharing my screen.
Yes, hey everyone, it's a whole pleasure to be able to greet you in this section. So I you
Yes,
can
Daniel.
we can share your screen.
Yeah. So yes, this is our Azure Developer Community website, and here we basically focus on learning, networking, and upskilling. You can join our community. We have already 10,000 plus member in our community, and 100 plus city we have crossed. The community is now becoming a very big community. Like we have a support of the 10,000 members now. So thanks for joining. And if you haven't joined till now, you can go and join the community. And these all are our session which we do. So you can check all the sessions. These all are the cities where our community is. If there is any city, you can connect with that on the meetup group, and so you can get the daily update where is the session and what all the things are happening. So, like we are a community organizer, and today the session is in. So yes. So firstly, let introduce like the today's session is in Azure Developer Community Jaipur. And basically my introduction. I'm a Azure Developer Community Organizer of Jaipur, and I'm a very open source enthusiastic and love to participate in hackathons and learn new technologies. And now working as an app developer. So as like Daniel, our guest, so Daniel is like MVP of Microsoft in Dev, and he's also a Gold MLSA. He's a Dev advocate. He's a C# MVP. Like he have done very awesome work. He's a software engineer. So like what to say about Daniel? So I will hand over to Daniel to start the session and share the knowledge with us. Thank you, Daniel. All upon you.
Thank you to you to inviting me to this uh, space in the community. For me, it's a pleasure to be here to interact between each other. One thing to mention is that my native language is Spanish, so I really appreciate these spaces because I can improve and practice my English skills. So thank you also
No
for that.
problem. Yeah, yeah, you can go for that.
Okay, I
Okay.
can share my screen.
Yes, you can share it.
And remember, if you have any questions, comments, you can write in the section comments and connect between each other.
Yes, I will be telling you all the comments when you are open for the queries. And everyone, please, if you have any doubts, you can put up in the comment section. Daniel will surely. Yes, now it's aired on the stream. Yes, now it's visible to all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if you want, you can. We can start now.
Yes, sure. You can start.
Awesome, thank you again, and thank you everyone to be here in this space. In this case, to talk about the power of Azure App Service to deploy our applications. In this case, we can start with the most basic things to do as to the most advanced. So this is the idea for this session. I take this opportunity to introduce myself a little more. I have the opportunity to participate as Microsoft MVP in developer technologies field, and also as MVP about CsharpCorner. I have the opportunity to participate as Microsoft MVP in developer technologies field, and also as MVP about CsharpCorner. I have the opportunity to participate as Microsoft MVP in developer. Okay. Also, I have the opportunity to work as systems engineer. I live in Ecuador. This is in Americas region. in this case, as software engineer. And also I have the opportunity to work as developer advocate in Riganti in Czech Republic. I have also had the opportunity to participate as Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors in the Golf category. And for me, it's always be a pleasure to be able to participate in this space because we can exchange knowledge and interact to acquire new knowledge with each other. So if you have any question, remember, you can write in the section comments. So in this session, we can start talking about Azure, specifically about Azure App Service. So then we can start with our process in the practical part. In this case, deploying our static web applications to Azure for the people can access to our applications. And then, for example, we can review our project, for example, in Asp.net to deploy our web application with the databases and all of these to Azure as well. For then review other things, other particular things about cloud computing, specifically in this resource in Azure App Service, for example, how to do a continuous deployment if we have a GitHub repository, and also, for example, when we have our website published, how to assign a custom domain and something like that. So we can start it talking about Azure App Service. And Azure App Service is one resource of Azure in general. Azure is a cloud provider by Microsoft. In this, we can find or find some resources in the infrastructure services. That is, for example, to have a virtual machine, set up the networks, the disk, and everything this to set up our environment and deploy our applications, for example. In this case, we need to manage all the infrastructure to have our application. This is the infrastructure services. In the other hand, we can find the platform services. That is, for example, we can, in this part, only deploy our applications, and Azure will work in manage the infrastructure and all of them. In this case, in the platform services, we only need to focus in our applications, and Azure works in the rest. For example, in this case, we can work with data, with databases to connect and work with data. Also, intelligence part, for example, the cognitive services to consume some models, to have some features in artificial intelligence, and also in platform field. In this case, I will be our focus. In this case, web apps to deploy our applications with the concept platform as a service. So with this in mind, we can review Azure App Service. Azure App Service allows you to build our web applications, backend, frontend, web APIs, web APIs, sorry, and any programming language without managing this infrastructure, because Azure works in that with this resource. And also we can upload some cloud computer benefits. That is, for example, high availability, compatibility with Windows or Linux to deploy our applications. And also, for example, in this particular case, do the automated deployment, for example, from GitHub repositories, Azure DevOps, or any Git repository as well. So with this overview, we can start talking in the practical part. In this case, for example, we can start talking about the static web pages. That is, for example, I have this example here, a static web applications, that is HTML and CSS files and static files like an image. So I have this little example in HTML. Suppose that we want to deploy our static web application that the other people can access it. So we can do that with this Azure resource, with app services, and we can see the process now. To do that, we can access to the portal Azure. In this case, we need to have an account. In this account, we need to have a subscriptions. For example, we can consider the Azure for Students offers, that in this case, if we have .edu mail, we can access to the Azure for Student offers, or for the general public, we can consider Azure free with 1 month in Azure credits to and other free resources for 1 year. So in the account with a subscriptions, we can access to the Azure portal. So we can see now. And if you don't know the Azure portal, this is a dashboard. In this, we have the frequently resources used in Azure, for example, in this part. Also, we can list our resources, the resources group, and other targets. For example, I like use, for example, show the time. For example, in my time zones is that. And this is the dashboard in Azure that we can see. The first resource that we want to create is App Services. App Services, we can locate it in this site. This is the most used resources in Azure, App Services, or we can find in the search section. In this case, we can find services in the section. And here we can see all types of this resource here, or create new one. So in this case, we can go to create a new resource. And the first thing we need to specify is the subscription. The subscription that we want to create our app service resource. I am going to select this, and also the resource group. The resource group is, as the name says, a group that we can resource, for example, our web applications, databases, and all other resources associated. So in this case, I'm going to create a new resource, for example, Azure India Community. Azure India Community. And then we need to specify the instance details for our resource. In this case, for example, the name of our applications. With this name, we can access to the applications with a subdomain that is the name.azurewebsites.net. So we can put an example. Hi, Azure India, for example. This is available, as you can see. And then we need to specify the publish configuration. In this case, for example, if our project is with code, this is the case. Or also we can consider Docker containers. Yes, but in this case, our application is a static web application, and with the code is fine. And then we need to specify the framework, but this is, remember, a static application. We can put anything. Then we can specify the operating system. In this case, we can put our application on Linux, on Windows, and Azure will be work to set up all environment to work or execute our application. We can put in Windows, and finally the region when our application will be work. For example, in Central US is fine in this case. Also, we can see the West India, and the recommended in this case is to put the near as possible where our users use our application. So in this case, I can put that. And finally, our app service plan, that is that we are paying for that. We can select, let me create a new plan. And depending of the plan, we can find different functionalities. For example, in the free plan, also we have, for example, a storage 1 gigabytes of text to storage, memory. But if we have, for example, a custom domains, we need to specify this plan or also, for example, to certificates. And in production environments, for example, we can consider other plans to have, for example, backups, traffic manager, and this depends of our that we need. So I'm going to put in the free plan. I have one for that, and this is all to create our resource. In this case, our web app. Okay, we can create this resource now. This takes around 30 seconds to deployment. In this case, to create a resource. In this section, we can see the details of this operation, the operation to create a resource. As you can see in this part, for example, operation details, the attributes, and something like that. But we can wait to the resource. Okay, as you can see, the resource is very fast to create, and we can access to it now. In this section of the resource, we can select overview. We can hope to load. Okay, this is the overview of the resource. For example, we can see the resource group, the status, in this case running, the location, the subscription, and the most important thing, the URL to access to our application. If we go here, hi azureindia.azurewebsites.net, we can see in this site something like, hey, hello world, your application is running, it's time to deploy your code. And in this case, remember, our intention is to deploy this static web application. So to do that, we can go to the general option in this resource. In this particular case, in the advanced tools, let me see. If you can find, you can search in this site. Advanced tools. Advanced tools is to access to the file of our application, and in this case, the intention is to put these files in the directory of our web app. So I'm go to the advanced tools, and we can see in this site the Github environment, that is to access to directory files here as a command console or a directory of folders and files. And here, for example, inside www.root, we can see the files of our application. For example, hosting start.html is this application. And if we remove that and refresh this page, we can see, hey, something wrong here because there is no anything. So the thing we can do in this case is, for example, only copy and paste here, because this is a static page. And if I refresh this page, we can see that our static web application is now available on Hey Azure India, hi azureindia.azurewebsites.net, and access to everyone from the internet.
Yes, it's truly amazing. Like,
Also, thank you for that. Yep. In this first step, we can see how to deploy our static web application. But what happens if we have a project with a framework, with a language programming associated with a database? The process is so different because we need to consider other things. For example, this is the next part. For example, how to deploy our web projects with ASP.NET. This is an example. We can consider other frameworks as well. ASP.NET in Visual Studio 2090. Okay, I have a project let me show you here. This is a project with ASP.NET 5 with a .vvm framework. .vvm is a framework that allows you to create our applications with HTML for the pages and C# for the other parts. As also, let me uh, uh, put some in my screen that you can see in a better way. Okay, this is the example as a project that I have. This is a crude operations: create, read, update, and delete records. Let me run this example to in this case to work with student data. As we can, or as we are working with data, we need to have a database, and if we can, or if you want, deploy our applications, the database have to deploy as well. In this case, I use SQL resource in Azure, and now this is set up to a database on Azure. So in this case, our intention is deploy this application, for example, to add a new student, see the details, and this is the idea of this little application to deploy to Azure. So, for example, let me change something here. I have here that the string connection to the databases. In this case, for example, okay, the other option is to have localhost, but the default connection now is in MySQL server, sorry, on Azure, as you can see. But the intention in this case, okay, is to deploy to Azure. To do that, in our solution, and also in Visual Studio, we need to log in with that same account in Azure to reference to our Azure account. So in our solution, we have some projects. In this case, we need to identify the principal project. In this case, I have this about a web application. And here we can click, right click, and go to the option Publish. In this option, let me delete that one more time. Okay, in this option, we can create a publish profile. That is to associate our solution, our Visual Studio solution, to a profile to deploy our project to Azure. So here we can specify that. And here we can also, for example, consider a folder to have the deployed files on a specific folder. And also, for example, a Docker container register. But in this case, our intention is to work with Azure. And in Azure, we can work with Azure App Service, as can see previously. Also, for example, with Azure App Service for containers, Azure Container Register in Azure, and also, for example, with virtual machines. This is specifically for Windows Server machines, but in this case, our intention, for example, is to work with App Service. We can work on Windows or Linux, and I'm going to put on Windows to create a profile. And here we can identify the Azure App Service resource that we can or we like to work. For example, here we can see Azure India Community. This resource, we can also create another resource here. For example, put in India app, for example, there is no available. Sure, this is available. And also, for example, this is the name, no? The name that Azure websites.net, the subscription name, remember, the resource group, and the hosting plan. This just take only a seconds to create. And with that, we can have the relation with our project with this Azure resource. So we can wait for that. One moment more. Okay. We can see that the resource is ready, and this is all that we need to specify. We can push in finish, and this is all. We can see that the overview, for example, okay, the most important thing in this case, the site, Azure India app.azurewebsites.net, and finally click here on publish to deploy our application. It will be depends of our internet connection, because in this case, some files and directory will be generated and deployed to our Azure App Service resource. As you can see in this part, let me show you. Okay, here. Directory, this is adding on Azure App Service resource, and also the adding files. When the process is ready, the publish is successful. The resource will be restarted and the page loaded. We can wait for that. The first time takes a little more to load the page. And for example, everyone can access now to the Azure India app. This address, sorry, that Azure websites.net right now, and push, for example, your examples now from the internet, this resource. For example, I can put other example. For example, we can register our friend Bill Gates. And add this new resource, this record in this little demo, and this is all to do in this case. In this case, we have seen the process to deploy directly our projects to Azure. And what happened in the future, we are working with a team. Many people are working in the code. How can we deploy this type of applications? And this is the next part. Continuous deployment with a repository on GitHub. Yeah, to do that, in this case, the idea is, for example, have a repository in GitHub to create a continuous deployment. That is, for every change in our repository, that is, for every commit, the process, the deployment process will be automatically by Azure. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is associate this resource to a GitHub repository, for example. In this case, I have installed the extension of GitHub. No. I have a Git in my computer in this section. Oh, okay. I have Git in this section, and we can create or clone a repository. In this case, I'm going to create a Git repository. Okay. I'm logging in my GitHub account in the section. We can add other account and log in. But in this case, I have my account. I'm going to create a repository. For example, in this case, Azure India community. Okay, this is the repository name, and the description is optional. Private repository is fine, and we can create and push our new repository to associate this project to the repository. Okay. We can hope to the process. We can wait to the process, sorry. And this is established. Let me go to the to GitHub to check that. And okay, we can see Azure India community, that this repository 20 seconds ago, with our project. This is all to associate our project to GitHub. Now we need to associate this repository, this GitHub repository, to our Azure App Service. Okay. Let me put in this site. I'm going to dashboard. In the dashboard, I can see. I'm going to Azure India app. Okay. Okay. We are now in our Azure App Service resource, and in this part on the deployment center, we can set up this communication between Azure and our GitHub repository. So here, the first thing we need to do is specify the source of our code. In this case, we can select for continuous deployment, GitHub, Bitbucket, local Git, Azure repos as well. And also, for example, if we have our project in OneDrive, for example, we can specify that and deploy our application here. But the intention in this case is with GitHub repository, and we can select here a provider. A provider will be responsible to deploy our applications, build our applications, and specify the environment to work to access to applications. In this case, we can consider GitHub Actions, App Service, Build Service, or Azure Pipelines when we're working with Azure DevOps, for example. But in this case, we can consider GitHub Actions. Okay, in this case, we selected GitHub. Here we can specify our account, the repository, Azure India community, and the branch. In this case, only I have the master. And then we can see here the runtime stack, version, and this is all to implement or set up our continuous deployment. And here we can see the logs. Let me refresh or save here. Okay. It's loading. Okay, there is no logs to show for the moment. Or is okay. We can go to our GitHub repository, and here, remember we specified GitHub Actions. We can go to these actions, and here we can see the process that Azure established to deploy our web applications. In this particular case, the flow is build our application. If everything is fine, then we can, or GitHub Actions will deploy our application. So this is a perfect bar to see, for example, the logs, if anything can be run, because the environment is set up here. For example, .NET is installed. We can see an error here. And this is very well because we can see what's wrong with our project, as we can see here. So one dependency is missing in this part, and then we can check that. The process stop in this case, and in the summary, the build failed, and the deployed, we can proceed. I'm sure that we can see here. Okay, no deployments. In this case, the deployment fails when we have a succeed deployment, we can see the status here for every commit. And the error in this case is because the version specified here is 3.1 and my version project is net 5. So we can taking this in this case in mind, but this is the process to deploy our web applications, to set up a deployment center. And one important thing is there is no problem if our process fails, because Azure App Service will keep the currently work project. That is, for example, if I'm going to our web applications, we can see the previously version that works fine. So we can wait for that. Okay, yeah, we can see our application. So this is the idea for deployment, automatic deployment to our projects. And also we can see additional Azure App Service features. And one feature that we can consider, for example, is here, Azure India app.azurewebsite.net. What happens if we want to have our custom domain? We can do that on Azure as well, and we can review the process to achieve that. Here, remember, we can scale up our application, that is to add more resources or more functionalities to our app. In this case, for example, our plan is free. And in this case, for example, we can, or we want to have a custom domains. We can scale up our application to this plan to have this functionality. This is a concept of cloud computing, and we can see this concept in this resource. Okay, we updated our app service plan, and now we can create a custom domain, right? So to do that, there is other resource, in this case, custom Azure App Service domains. Here, App Service domains. We can see the other domains that I have and create new one. In this case, the domain will be discount from our Azure credits in our plan. And here, the thing we need to specify is, as a first point, the details of projects. In particular, in this case, the subscription name. I'm going to put this, and the resource group. I'm going to put that. Okay, and now specify the domain details. That is, search a domain name to then associate to our application. So let me find AzureIndia.com, for example. It's unavailable. Okay, this domain is available. It's available. Yeah, right. Okay, Azure India app.com. And we can next, we need to specify, we have to specify the details contact. Let me put very fast this. Okay. Here we can review our resource. Okay. Everything files we can put here. And okay, this is the review to create our domain. As you can see, the most important thing in this case is the name of the domain, azureindiaapp.com, and we can create the resource now. In this case, creating a new domain. This is real. As you can see, we can have some 1 or 2 minutes to create our new domain. While that happens, we can go to our resource, Azure India app. And here we can go to the option custom domains in this section. As you can see, for example, now we can find Azure India app.azurewebsites.net. That is our currently domain. But in this case, we want to associate with our other domain that is created now. To do that, we can go to this option, add custom domain. Okay.
Uh, yes, sir. So, like, say, like we can have a query section afterwards.
Sorry.
What you was asking? Any questions?
If you have any questions, you can
Okay, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
can review
Actually,
now.
the voice was a bit lagging. Yeah. So, like, when you're asking, like, how, like, integrating with app. So, is it easy to do? Like, how we can do that?
Sorry, what come? And I can review that.
Like, I was asking, like, for integrating with the app, like Azure with app. So, what will be the main benefit? Integrating Azure with our app.
Okay, it's for the English. Sorry.
Okay, like I'm
If
asking.
you can explain in the other way.
Okay, yeah. I'm asking what are the benefits to integrate with Azure, the app, with the app.
With Azure App Service,
Yeah, the
yeah,
app with Azure App Service.
as you can
What?
see, it's very easy to work. For example, in the static web applications, the only thing we need to do is move on our static files. And then, for example, when we're working with our projects, the deployed is in only seconds, as you can see previously. And also we can approach other features like continuous deployment with GitHub to associate with Azure. And also, as we can see in this moment, how to add a custom domain. In this case, the domain is ready. And this is other things that we can see of a power of this resource.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So we can continue with the session and the question we will do.
Okay, sure. Um, Let me see to share again. Okay. Can you see my screen right now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, we can see. We can see
Okay.
yours.
Thank you. Taking this account, show or see that our domain is created now. Let me go to this resource. In this part, the only thing that we can consider is, for example, manage DNS records for example, to associate our application or mail service or all of that we can put and manage it. And only and one thing more, that renew or add domain. For example, the expiration date of our domain is October 14 in 2022. Yeah, 2022. Yeah, we can put
Yes.
auto renew domain here, and our domain in the expiration date will be renewed every year with our Azure subscription associate. This is only thing we need or we can consider to know. And now we can go again to our Azure App Service resource here and Azure in the app to associate our domain. So here in this part, let me check here. Custom domains, we can add a new custom domain and here put our new domain, azureindiaapp.com. We can validate And then the thing to associate a new domain is with the DNS records here, but we can post, for example, with a record or CNAME in our domain, but our domain is in the same subscription of our Azure subscription here. As so in this case, Azure can do this work for us. And here, if we click in add a custom domain, Azure will do all the process for us. So as you can see, a custom domain is ready. Let me refresh here. Okay, Azure India app.com is now working. And if we go into this address, we can see problems with a certificate. We can review that. And now, if we apart this part of the security of domain, we can access to our applications with this domain. Okay, the first time takes a little. Okay, you can see now our applications, but accessing from this new domain. But as you can see, there is a problem with these certificates because our in this case Microsoft Edge says, hey, your place it's not safe. And this is because we are not have certificates associated with these domains, as you can see here, not secure. And this is the other option that we can consider. In this case, is create an Azure App Service certificate to have a secure site in this case. So to do that, we have two options. The first thing is buy a certificate. We can find this in App Service Certificates in this section. And as one other resource in Azure, we can create that, specifying the details of the project, the description, and the certificate details. One thing to consider is the price of this resource, as you can see here. This can be some expensive, maybe for some people, but we can consider other options free to create certificates or associate certificates to our web applications. So to do that, we can go back again to our resource, to Azure App Service resource. And here we can find the TLS SSL settings. And here we can create a private key certificates, that is, create a certificate, but managed by Azure. In this part, for example, create app service managed certificate. Here we can select a custom domain associated with our project. And here, for example, Azure says host names eligible for a certificate creation. So we can create this certificate. This is a complex process, to authorize this domain to have a certificate, a secure site. So it can take 3 minutes approximately to create this resource. Finally, when this is created, we can go back to custom domains option, and here select the domain in question and add binding. Add binding, here we can select our certificate, and this is all. But the certificate is created now, and this can take a little more. So that is the things we need, or we can see with Azure App Service to deploy our applications, to set up a custom domains, to put in this domain a certificate, and deploy our applications. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, we can review in this moment when the certificates is created.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. So there are many questions. Let me show. So
Okay,
what if I need to call external services from within my static web app? How easy that can be done, and how about the security?
it depends about the thing we need to do. For example, if we want to connect with a database, this connection is in our project. So this configuration we need to do this in our, for example, in our app settings configuration, and this is easy and complex at the same time, because in some cases very easy to do. For example, only specify the string connection and the
Yeah.
code, everything that. But in the Azure App Service, this is really easy because the only thing is deploy our application, and there is no more to do, right? Because Azure works in the infrastructure that is set up the environment. If in this case, for example, was in .NET, but we can also consider Node.js, Java, PHP, sorry, and other
Yes.
frameworks. So it's easy in this way, and also because this is with the concept platform as a service. If we are working with other focus, for example, in infrastructure as a service, in this case, we need to create the virtual machine, set up the environment, deploy our application, but have to do this all process. In this case, it's very easy because it's a platform as a service, and the option is, as you can see, only set up and next in some occasions, and and it's easy to work with that. I I believe that we can hear you. I don't know if I no, not yet. We can hear you yet, but okay, when you can fix that. The question, so how can we choose a right service for different use cases? Like, we can hear you, we can hear you now, like Azure Service Fabric and other services as well.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. Sorry. Should
No
I read
problem.
that? So how can we choose a right service for different use cases like Azure Service, Fabric, and other service as well?
It depends of the things we need to do, and also in some cases the money that the company have, because in some cases the company needs, I need a economic solution, and in other case the company have more resources to to acquire these types of resources. This is one thing to consider. For example, the other part is, for example, if our solution is compatibility with the one resource in particular, and this is some options that we can consider. For example, talking about if we have for example, a Visual Studio or or old web application, and this not supported with Azure App Service. One thing we can consider is, for example, create a virtual machine, set up the environment, and this is another option that we can uh, consider. But it will depend of the needs, the things we need to do, and the resources of money that we have. But there are, for example, for uh, practical parts to study, there are free options that we can consider, as we can see, for example, in Azure App Service with the free plan.
Yes. So like Leo joined with us. He's saying thank you, Daniel, and me.
Thank you,
Thank you
Elaine.
for joining.
Thank you for the message.
Thank you, Ganesh sir, for.
Thank you very much.
One more question: how many services can be embedded in one app?
Many services as you want, because we can have a database, an Azure Community Service Associate, deploy our application. Um, many services we can embed it in one app.
Okay. So yes, I don't think there is any question now. Like folks will ask, I have sent, like they have asked for the LinkedIn and our LinkedIn ID. So I believe they will ask there if they have any. Or you can put in the comment section, so we will check it out and surely answer you.
Okay, I'm going to put that. And to finish, I would like to show you to associate a certificate. A certificate is currently created to finish with that. Okay,
Yes.
the App Service Managed certificate is ready, and we can now associate with this insecure associate domain. Remember, in this case, add binding. We can wait for that to load. Okay. We can specify the custom domain, azureindiaapp.com, private certificate, in this case, that Azure creates for us, and the TLS type, that is in this case. And finally, add this binding to see that our web application with our custom domain is now in a security way. We can we don't have these problems right now. Let me show from here, and you can see that our connection is secure right now with HTTPS connection, and our application is here. This is the last part to show you. So yeah. And finally, let me put here. In this case, this is the way to say thank you. My social networks is in this part. If you have any questions, comments, or if you need help from me, it will be a pleasure to collaborate with you. In all social networks, you can find me as ES Daniel Gomez in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and all social networks. For me, it will be a pleasure to connect with you. And when you want, we can have a communication.
And yes, I have already add all the IDs in, like in the um, in the down of the YouTube in the description. You can check it out. And even you want, if you want to connect. Otherwise, there are many links. You can just take a screenshot and you can go for it. And I will surely say to connect with Daniel. He's really amazing person and doing many such sessions. So do connect with him.
Thank you very much for that, and I really enjoy this session because I can practice my English, as you can hear, but thank you
But
for this space, because
like
for
no
me it's
problem.
important.
No problem. Your English was too good, and like we were able to understand all the thing. So there
Thank
was no communication gap between. Like message was conveyed right. So first, thank you, Daniel, for like joining us and giving us so much good insight on the power of Azure app and web services. And surely, I will be waiting for you to take more session on our community, on Azure developer community, with more topics, more amazing new topics.
Thank you very much for this invitation. And and of course, when you want for me, come with me to other
Sure,
sessions as well.
sure, sure, sir. Sure. So thank you for joining, everyone. You can connect with us on Azure Developer Community. I have already shared the link. And once again, thank you, Daniel. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, for
and
joining.
thank you everyone.
We can have our click. Okay, thank you.